and welcome to our District in-Service Day. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are conducting today's learning on the traditional territories of the Nisga'a, Tsimshian, Haisla, and Gitxsan. We're honored to live, work, and play on these territories and honored to work with the students from these territories. I would like to also acknowledge that I'm experiencing this learning from the traditional territories of the Likwada, Klahus, and Comox people of the Campbell River area. I'd like to talk briefly about why we've decided to use this very valuable day on this very important issue. There's a lot to be proud of in our work that we have done and continue to do, but there's continued work in front of us. First Nations students are not meeting with the same level of success. Some First Nations students are experiencing racism of low expectations that need to be addressed. And we need to address the overall issue of racism in our system more effectively. All of these pieces are ensuring that our educational system is a tool for reconciliation and serves Indigenous students, non-Indigenous students, period. We will recognize success when we know Indigenous peoples believe themselves to be self-determining, self-governing, self-sufficient, and can practice their Indigenous cultural traditions and customs as an important and respected part of BC society. So today I asked the question, and today my hope for you and for me and for all the people on this call is to have a better answer at the end of the day to the question, what is reconciliation? To me, from where I sit at this very moment, it's a process for developing respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people across Canada. It's about working together to overcome the devastating effects of colonialization. With reconciliation, it's important to acknowledge harmful policies and practices and to find positive ways to move forward together. As you know, our Indigenous population is approximately 46%. You may have heard us in the past in our school district talk about responding to issues collectively as a whole. And we summarize that work, our collective work, as together we are better. You may also have heard us say that when we celebrate, we acknowledge the role of everyone in our district, the role that everyone in our district plays related to the success of our learning. I have spoken many times around the role of a custodian, the role of a finance person in the board office. Many of you have asked the question, why do I have to participate in the in-service day on Indigenous education? I'm in the finance department, or I'm a member of the maintenance department. The answer to that question is very simple. Reconciliation is all of our work to do. It is not only the work of district staff, teachers, and support staff. So what is it? What is reconciliation? What does it mean to you as an individual? It could mean different things to different people. What I really want people to know is that many of you are already doing reconciliation and you're not even aware of it. I'd like to demonstrate this by sharing a couple examples of things that I have learned in the past 2 months. And to talk about the first one, I wanted to talk about the difference between acknowledging territory, which is what I did a few minutes ago, and welcoming to the territory. So what I did a short while ago was acknowledging territory. I'm a non-Indigenous person with no hereditary ties to the Campbell River people. I'm well within my rights to acknowledge respect for the lands and the people, but under no circumstances do I get to welcome anyone to the territory of which I am not a member. There are likely people on this call who believe that acknowledging territory is tokenism. And I appreciate and I attempt to appreciate your point of view, but I can assure you that that is not the case. Acknowledging territory is reconciliation. Many of you have experienced a welcome to the territory from a designated band member from a community. How do you receive a message from a knowledge keeper? What's your takeaway from a knowledge keeper? Some of us on this call have experienced historically messages from community members that have not left us with a good feeling of working together and fostering a preferred future. I myself have experienced that. It happened a long time ago, and it did not leave a positive impact on relationship or individual people. And it left a long-lasting feeling. I believe those times are changing. I can't help but think and compare that experience to the experience that I had at Mount Elizabeth this past June at the Welcome to the Territory from a designated member of the Haisla community. It was powerful, it was welcoming, and it was respectful. Here's something I've learned since then. When individuals welcome you to their territory, consider it a gift. The knowledge keeper is gifting you their story. At the time, it might not feel like a gift. The experiences that person shares may not be what you had been expecting or may not be what you wanted to hear. I would encourage you to accept the message through the lens of a gift. When a knowledge keeper is designated by a community to do a welcome to the territory, we can't control what they say or how long they take to say it. That is up to the individual. Accept other people's story as a gift. Doing so is reconciliation. The second learning opportunity I had was around my specific use of language when identifying communities. And Agnes is laughing, and that's fine. I was in the habit of referring to 10 bands, the 10 bands that we serve as our communities. I did it all the time until a member of a band in Hazelton called me on it. She described my behavior as colonialistic. Agnes can attest to the fact on how I reacted to that. However, how I reflected on that is a different story. And the bottom line is the point that this person made was a valid point. Indigenous communities are not the properties of the school districts that serve them. I needed to check my own white privilege at the door as it related to this scenario. I reflected long and hard on that feedback and subsequently have changed my behavior most of the time. I'm still working on it. For the record, I will always refer to students as our students. I will not refer to communities as our community. Acknowledging feedback, accepting it, that is reconciliation. Some people feel uncomfortable when they're having to consider reconciliation and the ninth standard. We can appreciate that. We need to come to a place where we can feel comfortable in our discomfort. Still today, reconciliation and Indian residential schools cause me a great deal of discomfort, but I have come to a place where I'm comfortable in my discomfort. Brene Brown calls it constructive discomfort. Some people may be scared to talk about reconciliation, colonialism, Indian residential schools. Some people may think it's not my place to do. Well, in fact, it is. Reconciliation is not one grandiose one-time gesture. Reconciliation is doing things in your classroom that acknowledge the language and culture of the people on whose land you are working. Reconciliation is acknowledging territory. Reconciliation is a school that is visually representative of the culture it serves. Reconciliation is greeting someone with the language of the local people. You're going to meet Colleen Austin very shortly, and she is going to further this discussion. I learn from Colleen regularly. One thing I learned from her very recently is I talked to her about the attempts at language that I make, and she encouraged me to continue. She said, Janet, you are not going to get it perfect. People are going to provide you feedback. It's okay to make mistakes. At least you're trying. That is reconciliation. My message to you today is as follows. Indian residential schools, colonialization, they're not your fault. Reconciliation is your responsibility. Reconciliation is all of our work to do. You are not alone in this work. We will support you. So my hope for your day is that, again, at the end of the day, you have your own definition of reconciliation and your own plan moving forward to take one small step forward as it relates to reconciliation. I truly hope that you find today to be helpful on your own journey on integrating Indigenous ways of knowing and being into your everyday work. I apologize that I will be leaving the call now and be back for Monique Gray Smith at 12:30. And I smile because I know how much you're going to enjoy both Agnes, Colleen, and Monique. I will now ask Agnes to take over and facilitate the remainder of the morning. I must excuse myself, and I will see you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. I'm going to begin by introducing myself. Many of you know me, or many of you have seen me around schools. So my name is Agnes Casgrain, and I'm a director of instruction, and under my portfolio is Indigenous Education. And my main job is to support the work of the superintendent in whatever her goals are. And Janet just talked about some of her goals around Indigenous education, and the work that I do supports that. Some of the work that I do is I connect with all the education coordinators from the 10 nations. I meet with principals and I support them in any way I can. I support Indigenous projects. I help out Indigenous families and students if there are any issues that I can help them with. And I am trying to make sure that the 46% of our Indigenous students are able to live and learn and be well in our schools and on their educational journey. So I meet with lots of people, and I've had this position for 7 or 8 years now. And so I go to the schools, and I may not have come into your classrooms, but I see evidence. And so I am here to tell you that I'm really proud of the work you're doing. I see all kinds of evidence of teachers working to integrate Indigenous knowledge, culture, and history into their classrooms, and for school teams to do that too. Some of the evidence I've seen are school gardens. Sustainability was a huge concern for Indigenous people, both in the past and, you know what, in the present. I know many families who survived because of their garden. And so every time you plant a garden, you are making a connection with the land, and that is huge. Making a connection with the land is an Indigenous concept, and anytime you can integrate that, it's perfect. So every time I see a school garden, I am a happy girl because I see Indigenous work in practice. The use of circles, like Janet said, sometimes you're doing reconciliation when you don't know you're doing reconciliation. And that is true for teaching. Sometimes you are making an Indigenous connection without even knowing it. The use of a circle as a meeting structure, and the use of taking turns as a meeting structure really has, the Indigenous people have been doing that for centuries. And every time you do that, you're supporting an Indigenous idea about the way to meet in a polite and inclusive way. Outdoor education. Outdoor education is becoming really big across the province, and I have seen more and more of it happening in our schools over the last 7 or 8 years that I've been working in this position. Any connection to the land, anytime you can learn connected to the land, anytime you can learn when you're outdoors is really an Indigenous construct. And I'm really proud of the outdoor education programs that I see in the district. And I'm proud to hear that there are more. When I've read the school growth plans, I heard about more of those outdoor programs, and that is great. I am really proud when I see and hear about the lessons that connect to the land. And you know what? I talk to lots of students. I stop them in the hallways and I go into lunchrooms, and I'm more of an informal person. Talking like this is not usually my norm. But the kids, that's what they're excited about. That's what they tell me about. And so good. I'm proud of that work you do. Kind of a new thing is looking at equity practices, and I write reports about equity because I write that you guys give me the information that I need to write my reports, because I have to report to Janet and to the ministry and to our Indigenous communities, I shouldn't have said that, the communities, about how we're making learning possible for Indigenous students. And you know what? Some of the things we're doing to make that possible for Indigenous students is making it possible for all students. An example of something I've seen is credit recovery. When somebody's away from school for a long time, they've missed units, you don't have it in your mark book about a mark for that particular concept that you were teaching. We find ways for students to make up, to get that knowledge in a different way. That's credit recovery. Those are equity practices, and I'm seeing that happening more and more. The Indigenous ways of learning and knowing tell us that it takes time and patience to learn. I am seeing more and more teachers and classrooms recognizing that, stretching out timelines, and I'm really proud of that work, because that's sometimes we really need to think outside the box to think about how can I change my practice? How can I change my expectation to make it more fair and equal for students? And the other thing that I note is the amount of role models that are being used in classrooms and in schools. And the role model program kind of filters through the resource centers. And so I know about the lists of role models, and I know about how often they're used. And that has been increasing over the years. More and more people are comfortable getting a role model and realizing that the people from the nations have information that is useful to us, that that's a good connection, that even getting them in the schools is important. It doesn't matter what they're talking about. Getting them in the classrooms and in the schools is important. One school has something called elders in the hallway. So they have a comfortable chair in the hallway, and the elders in that community feel comfortable to come and sit in the school for a little while. And they talk to the kids as they go by. Sometimes the principal sends a child to go and sit with the elder for a little bit. That is really good. And so anytime you can make the community, someone from the nations, welcome in your school, either for educational purposes or just for a presence, that is really important. So I want to congratulate you. You are doing a fantastic job. And you know what? If you've only done a little bit of something, good. If you do a lot and it's part of your everyday teaching, good. Because wherever you are at on the continuum is okay. Where you're at is okay. And it doesn't matter if you know a little bit, nothing, or a lot. Wherever you're at on that continuum, it's okay. You're exactly where you should be. And learning from students, I call it learning from behind, learning from students or with students is perfectly acceptable. That is great. That makes students feel like they are part of a learning team. And that's really what we want. There are teaching teams, but there are learning teams, and students need to be included in those learning teams. So anytime you're teaching something and you don't know, it's okay. Say, I don't know. I don't know what that is. And you know what? You'll find the answer. It'll come to you. Maybe not that day, but somehow the information will come to you. And you have to trust the process. You don't need to be in control of everything. The lesson plan that you write in your book may not be what happened at the end of the day. When I was in the classroom, oftentimes my day book was filled out at the end of the day. This is where the students took me. Shelley Moore coined a phrase this year when I was reading. She says, the students are the curriculum. In other words, we have broad learning outcomes, right? There are lots of ways to get to those learning outcomes. Let the students take part in that. They are the curriculum. They'll tell you what they want to know. That's why that first half hour or so at the beginning of the day, where you're greeting kids, you're reconnecting with them, sometimes things come out in that first hour, half hour, that are going to tell you what you need to do in your lessons for the rest of the day. That's students as the curriculum. And I encourage you to do more and more of that. And you know what? That is a bit of an Indigenous way of being. The way that they solve problems, and the way that they untie knots is a term I use, is far gentler, and it's more of a process. It takes time and it takes conversation, and you get to where you're going, but you need to be patient with the process. So every time you can do some of that, that's great too. So I do want to tell you that I'm there for parents and I'm there for students, Indigenous students, and I help principals, but you know what? I am there for you too. And I have a team of people that I work with, and there are some things we have. So first of all, if you're doing a unit or you want to know how to get things going, you can phone me anytime. And on my business card is my personal cell phone number. You can text me, you can phone me, you can voicemail me. I might be able to help you directly, but more than likely, I'm going to send someone for you, right? I'm 911. And I have a team of people to send. Jeannie Stepp works with me at the Kitimat Center, and Bernice Gardner does too. Vanessa Sheary works out of the First Nations Resource Center in Terrace, and Vivian Smith works out of the Resource Center in Hazelton. So there are 3 resource centers, and those libraries are not for children. Those libraries are for teachers and support workers. They're for the adults in our system that work with Indigenous students and work with Indigenous teachers, because we have school teams, and there's information and there's resources you can borrow. Now behind me, you can see beautiful hand-carved masks and paddles. They're on the walls, and we bought them through the Resource Center from the local nations. But you know what? We are not a museum. If you like that mask and you say, I would love to bring that mask into my classroom and talk about carving and talk about why masks were, you know what? You just phone the Resource Center. They're going to take it right off the wall and they're going to lend it out to your classroom. And we're a museum. You're going to pass that mask around to students. You're going to talk about the respecting somebody's work, but they're going to be able to hold it in their hands and look at it. That's the kind of resource center that we are. We have a multitude of books and learning kits. So you just need to connect with us. We really want to be there to help you integrate some Indigenous knowledge, culture, and history into your classrooms. And you know, everybody gets stuck on the whole residential school piece, and it's a sad thing to teach about. It must be taught though, right? The real history. But you know what else? The Indigenous culture isn't just about sad stories. They had a rich lifestyle, and it continues. And the way that they use math in their everyday life is amazing. It's ingenious. And we need to teach about that, about the ingenious parts of that culture and how they survived and how they learned to survive and how they continue to do that. That carving behind me, I could never do that. But there are people who have that skill. We need to celebrate that, those Indigenous skills. So I want you to know that I'm here for you, and my team is here for you, and we want to help you. And you look at that mask, I'm in Kitimat, that mask is in Kitimat. If you're living in Hazelton and you want to work that into your classroom, you can borrow cross library, okay? We can make that happen. And that mail system that we use school to school, that's often the way that we transport material. Okay, it's like a library. It's for the adults in the building. You can borrow from any library. If you go into the Follett system, you can access and see what's there. If not, you can phone the libraries. And they have pamphlets, and they'll be sent out. They're renewing them right now, and they'll send them out. So I guess I want to tell you thank you. Your dedication to Indigenous students has not gone unnoticed. I'm not a big public speaker and I, don't write articles in the newspaper very often, but I am noticing all the work you do. And so thank you for that. As we go on with the morning, my assistant Jeannie Stepp, she is going to be monitoring the chat line. And so as I've talked, some of you might have had questions. We don't have a lot of time for a question and answer period, but at the bottom of your screen, it says chat. In there is a place for you to type in your questions. And Jeannie Stepp is monitoring that. If you would type your question and then at the bottom, either your name or particularly the school you're from, we are going to answer those questions. So Jeannie's going to record all the questions and then there'll be an email going out listing every question and every answer that I'm capable of answering. And we'll send that out to all staff. So if you have questions at any time during our presentations, write them down with your name and school, and we will be sure to answer them in the best way that we can and send it out to you through email or through our systems. Okay. I think I think I've hit all the things. So I guess my final word from you is, way back when we were just starting to learn about inquiry and how to do that, Janet and I were talking about how to present that. And we came up with the term leap and the net will appear. And that is such a useful term because that is so much of our life working with kids and in schools and with families. Sometimes we're not sure where things are going to go. So we encourage you to take that leap, even if you're afraid, even if you're wiggling in your seat because it's uncomfortable. Leap and the net will appear. And who is the net? We are the net. I'm the net. My resource people are the net. Your colleagues are the net. You have to take chances in life, and we want you to take some chances with Indigenous learning and trust in the end product, trust for the students to be the curriculum and lead you where you need to be. Trust that we will be there. All you need to do is ask. So that's how I'm going to end my presentation, and I'm going to lead you into the next step, which is Colleen Austin. So everybody knows that you can write your questions on the chat and Jeannie will take care of them and the answers will come to you. And so you're going to have questions when Colleen talks. So Colleen Austin is hired by the school district. We hired her because we know that Indigenous languages in schools it's a growing thing. And it's right now, the politicians, it's in legislation. They're talking about making some rules about Indigenous languages in schools and what must be done. That's part of reconciliation. And Lorna Williams, Dr. Lorna Williams, who's one of my mentors, talked to me about that a couple of years ago. And she said, we really need to start working in this district. We have a complex district. We have 10 nations within our district. We have 4 territories within the district, and we have 5 languages within the district. And so that is complex work. I don't have enough time in my day to do that work, and I'm the wrong person to do that work. And so we have asked Colleen Austin to come on board with our team and to help us learn and develop ways that we can have Indigenous languages in the schools. And we're just seedlings. We've just barely started. And so we've invited Colleen Austin to come and talk to you today about Indigenous languages and how we can introduce them into the schools. And so I'm very happy to present Colleen Austin. I do quite a bit of work with her. I find her delightful. I've heard her speak many times, and every time I hear her, I learn something new. And so I'm going to pass the baton over to Colleen Austin, and I hope you enjoy your day. You'll be seeing me again later on this afternoon. Thank you.
Noon, Agnes, Noon, Janet. I'm a gantlak to Taknis Nusum. Good morning, everyone. We got DYU, Colleen Austin DYU. Gispatwada Dipdego. Lilwit Diwalwatku Manganex Diwal Zogo Statlium Nuyu at Simshan Nuyu. Wapsnis Hiwas Gisalasu. I hope that you can all hear me okay. Maybe I can get a thumbs up from somebody if everyone's able to hear me. Agnes, can you hear me? Yes, Janet, you can hear me. Okay, great. All right. So I am here on Tsimshian territory, of which I'm a member of the Kitsilis House, Wapsnius Haiwas. It's a killer whale house. And you'll see behind me in my office, which is in the yellow house on the ground floor. I don't call it the basement because I have some lovely windows, as you can see, and a little bit of light coming in. And behind me are some pieces of artwork that are that were created by Paula Wesley, who is a Tsimshian Enstolo. And she created my drum and with the killer whale and the sun, and also the beautiful butterfly with the has, with the fireweed, and then another image of the Sleeping Beauty Mountain rising over Kitsim with the Skeena River in the foreground, representing my original house name, which was Biltzik, which means red sunset. Tomorrow will be a nice day. So I wanted to take a few minutes just to welcome you to my office virtually. I hope that you will all have an opportunity to come here and see this space for yourselves soon. It really is very special, and I feel really honored to be here. I'm going to share my screen and put up my PowerPoint, which is going to help to guide the first session of my time with you today. It's going to sort of tell you a little bit about myself, a little bit about Indigenous language revitalization, how the Truth and Reconciliation and UNDRIP align with the Indigenous language revitalization. I'm going to talk about the plan that, the basic plan for the next 4 or 5 years or 7 or however many years it's going to take to implement the plan for the district. And I'm also going to, then we're going to have a break, and we're going to come back, and I'd like to go through some of the ways that I'm attempting to share as much information as I possibly can with you. And I hope that you'll find that useful and enjoyable at the same time. I am going to, before I start, just ask you, because this is going to come up in this section, I'm going to ask that if you have a copy of the little Truth and Reconciliation and UNDRIP book, which I believe was Agnes had given out to all the schools, I'm hoping that you have that, because I am going to ask you to go through some parts of this book that pertain specifically to Indigenous language revitalization. And you can see that my book is kind of pretty ratty because I use it all the time. I'm also going to go over some games with you that I've developed. So we're going to, if you haven't already seen our little origami finger game, I'm going to share that with you. And I'm also going to share something that very few people have seen yet, and that is the little I Spy kit that I've made. So I'm gonna tell you all about that. So I'm hoping that you'll find that this time that we have together is useful. There may be many of you who already know what I'm sharing. This could serve as a reminder of how far you've come in your learning about Indigenous language revitalization. And for those of you who are starting your journey, hopefully this will provide you with some information that will be useful for building your practice as it aligns with Indigenous education. So I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully this will work. Let's just pop that PowerPoint up, and let's see here. Oops, there we go. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to time myself because I want to make sure that you get your break at the right time. So what we're doing today obviously is a district-wide in-service, and I have created this PowerPoint, which is similar to the PowerPoint that I created for the school leadership, for the administrators. And that was focusing mostly on Indigenous language revitalization in the school as a whole, and how to create a school culture that has Indigenous language revitalization incorporated into it. This particular presentation is geared more to how Indigenous language revitalization is working or could work in the classroom specifically. So as I was introduced by Agnes, thank you for that. I am contracted as the Indigenous Languages Coordinator. On September 18th, the announcement came out publicly that my contract, which I started last year, was extended to this year. And so my services are on a year-by-year basis, as the district may or may not need my services. So we will continue to have conversations about this work moving forward. And I certainly am looking forward to doing whatever the district needs of me during this time. This is the speakers lounge in this building. Right beside my office here is a little speakers lounge. So this is where we gather to have coffee.
Your camera's on, but you're not sharing your data.
Oh no. Okay, so let's see here. All right.
So you gotta do this in here.
Yeah.
Share screen. Yeah. And
Sure.
Morning, Andrew.
hey, good morning, Janet. Good morning, everybody in the
Sorry
district.
about that. I'm so glad that Andrew's here. I didn't realize I wasn't sharing my screen with you. Sorry about that. Let's try that again. All right. So are we?
How does that look,
Jenny?
everybody?
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Thank you. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So Indigenous language revitalization in the classroom. This is me, of course, and the speakers lounge beside me is a place where we can meet with elders or people who I'm working with, and have a cup of tea or some little cookie out of the freezer or something like that, and just have a quiet space to work and be present in this work. I also in my office have, as you can see on the top corner there, some smudging materials. It's really important for me to do this work with ceremony, and to be really mindful of the messages that are coming to me from people and reflecting on those. So that's all part of that. As I mentioned to you, some of you may know me already because we have worked together. Some of you may know me because we might be neighbors or friends, or just community members. And I just wanted, for those of you who don't know me, I would like to just let you know that I am First Nations. My ancestral territory is the Statliam Nation, which is the same nation as Dr. Lorna Williams. She actually has the same last name as my grandmother. And my grandmother and my mother this is the side of my mother and my grandmother that I have this ancestry. And however, 26 years ago, I moved to Terrace with my family to raise our family in this beautiful place. And I was adopted into the Kitsalis House, Wapsnius Haiwas, by my chief Stuart Bolton and matriarch Charlotte Ganu. I was given the name Biltzik, as I mentioned, and I now carry the name Wigot, which means big heart. And it was formerly bestowed upon Dr. James MacDonald, my WAP brother, who some of you know through his work as an anthropologist, a professor of anthropology at UNBC, his work with the House of Learning at the college here in Terrace, or you might know him through some of his books, such as The People of the Robin. I am married to former MLA Robin Austin. Some of you might remember him being around in those days as our MLA. And I am the mother of Graham, who is now a lawyer in Vancouver, and Amber, who is an educator in Terrace. She was in Kitwanga last year, and Graham and Amber both went through the public school system here in the Coast Mountain School District from kindergarten to grade 12. I am a certified Simalkiak language teacher. Through the TRB, I was mentored by Mildred Roberts, and the late Mildred Roberts and the late Lorna Johnson. I have my Master's of Education from the University of Victoria, specifically in Indigenous language revitalization. I was mentored by Dr. Lorna Williams and the late Dr. Trish Rossborough, as well as Dr. Peter Jacobs and Dr. Onawa MacGyver. I co-developed the Adult Dogwood program and the K-12 Independent School Language and Culture program at Na'aksa Gillikia School in Kitsimkiln for 14 years from 2005 to 2019. I was the president and vice president of the First Nations Schools Association of BC for 5 years from 2014 to 2019. I also was one of the 6 people who negotiated the BCT agreement, the BC Tripartite Education Agreement, supporting student success in British Columbia. And I worked closely for about 1.5 years with British Columbia, Canada, and BC First Nations. This 5-year agreement has brought a tremendous amount of additional funding for language and culture, connectivity, transportation, special education, especially in the First Nations schools, because I was actually focusing specifically on that work at the time. But regardless, this BCT agreement is for all First Nations learners, regardless of where they live or where they go to school. And this agreement will be due to be renewed, or the next iteration is due in about 1.5 years time. And I'm hoping that the negotiators will work very hard to provide equity in the funding and the opportunities to public schools, which is my sincere hope. As I mentioned, some of you do know me from being, sorry, I'm just gonna move this. Hang on, can I pop it down? Yes, I can. Some of you know me from working with you at Skeena School, and some of you know me from working with me or being around when I was the teacher and the principal at Na'aksa Gillikia School in Kitsimkiln. This is a photo of me in the pink. I know I've changed since then. I've really been focusing on my health and well-being over the last few years, so I do look a little bit different, but I haven't changed on the inside. Really, I am still very grateful for the opportunity to be a learner and also to share what I've learned with others. That Mildred Roberts, the late Mildred Roberts, is beside me in this photo, and Charlotte Ganu, my matriarch, is standing by there as well. She's been a big influence on my work. I also was part of the School of Choice presentation that was made to the school district back in 2009. And we were advocating for a school to be dedicated to the Simshan learnings. And we were hoping that we were going to be able to start that process back then. And although it didn't happen and other things did, it's really important to realize the value in those disappointments, because they're really tremendous learning opportunities as well. Sometimes we get thrown a bit of a curveball and we wonder why we're doing something, and then we realize, oh my goodness, there were much bigger plans in coming, and we needed to look at sort of a bigger effort. And I'm really excited now, 11 years later, to be communicating with you about Indigenous language revitalization in this district. And as Agnes and Janet mentioned, it is very complex with all of the nations and all of the languages to work with. It's one of the most complex districts in British Columbia where this is concerned. And that journey that we're on, we are on it together, and it's very exciting. I have done some research, of course, in community. Mostly my thesis and project report were to fulfill some of the requirements of my master's degree. And it was a fantastic opportunity for me to understand a few things. First of all, what does this mean to me? And I'd like you to think about that for a moment, okay? Like some of you, perhaps, you might wonder, why on earth would I ever want to engage or be part of Indigenous language revitalization in any particular way? Some of you might have thought, gee, that's really what I want to do, but others might have thought like me, I just can't even imagine doing this. And then I reflected. I wrote a little book called More Than Words, It's Personal. And that was about my journey as an individual, decolonizing myself and becoming connected to my ancestry and my adopted ancestry, my adopted nation. And then I, of course, with Dr. Lorna Williams and Charlotte and Lorna's sister, we went to Hawaii to be part of the documentation conference that was taking place there at the University of Honolulu. And then we spent a week in Hilo at the Hawaiian Immersion School, which had at the time been developed over 30 years from having no fluent speakers and hardly any resources. They actually, the history of the Hawaiian language revitalization was that there was a couple who decided to raise their children in the Hawaiian language, and they used the hula stories and songs to understand their language and culture. So they came from rather humble and difficult beginnings to having a full immersion school where Japanese is actually the second language learned in their school, and English is learned in another domain in their community because of the exposure to English being so great through radio and television and such. So that's how the immersion school operates there in Hawaii, in Honolulu. I'm sorry, in Hilo, Hawaii. And it was a really fascinating experience for me. And my research was on how the law of Flamsk, which means basically in English means respect, can be a vital part of our teachings, and also how it can help to increase our language learning, our Tsimshian language learning. So, and I'll explain more about that later. there have been many investments made in language revitalization over the past few years. The first one is, of course, the Truth and Reconciliation, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And I was really fortunate to be part of the ceremony that took place to unveil our signatures on the BC Tripartite Education Agreement. So Tyrone McNeil, who's the president of FNESC, and I was the president of First Nations Schools Association, are pictured here to unveil that document. We were, of course, joined by many leaders, Indigenous leaders, and ministers, federal ministers and provincial ministers of education. There's also, BC has also made a huge investment through First Peoples Cultural Council, $50 million over 3 years, specifically for language revitalization. So Tracy Herbert is the executive director of First Peoples, and there's a photo of her, of the announcement of that investment. So I just wanted to let you know that these are great investments, but I see them as just the beginning. We have much more work to do to increase the investments in this work moving forward. So the plan in the district is to touch on a number of different things for language revitalization. And I'd like to just acknowledge that there are many efforts and plans that have been developed in communities around the province. There are also plans that are developed by organizations, and I'm really excited about this plan here in this district. Again, because of its complexity, there's much more work to do than might be required if we just had one nation with one language to work with. But that's not going to scare us off. We're going to step up to the challenge because this is all about the future and our community. So the plan included the items that are highlighted on my screen here. And the first highlights, the bolded parts, are the ones that we accomplished last year or that we developed an understanding of last year. So I really needed to become orientated with the district, really understanding who's who and what's what. I needed to bring in research that was going to be able to support this work. I developed some resources and I got to know many of the other resources that are available already. I also had the opportunity to do some engagement pieces, and I'll explain those in a minute. Also training. So the training really was more along the lines of meetings and conversations with people, presentations to the Board of Education and First Nations support workers, etc. And also developing some technology connections. So I'll explain more about that after the break. I also was really keen to see about what kind of visible language was taking place in our schools already, and get an idea of what people were hoping to achieve with the visible language in their schools moving forward. So those are the things that I feel comfortable having more knowledge about. That said, there's still a lot of work to do, such as the bullet items that are below the bolded part, when that is the helping to support the building of practice, educational practices in Indigenous language revitalization, supporting teachers and First Nations support workers and administrators and the district as a whole, taking a look at how we can align our usual work and our usual ways of being and knowing with the Indigenous language revitalization pieces. Taking a look, we need to do more around documentation and sharing is crucial for us to be looking at leadership in Indigenous language revitalization, because this is a huge job, a huge undertaking. In order for it to be done well, we really need to have good leadership and people who are on board, many people who are on board. We've got a great team already, but it will be wonderful to build that further. We also need to take a look at innovation, some new ways, especially with the COVID situation, finding innovative ways to be able to do this work. Taking a look at our collaborations and the way that we work together, developing work plans that are on the continuum of language revitalization, taking a look at ways to safely and effectively implement the work, and also providing opportunities for this work to be in multiple domains. So obviously we're working with schools, but it's really important to consider how we might do this in the home and in our community with organizations and such. So those domains of language are very important. And also legacy. All of the work that we do, regardless of what kind of work we do, it's really important to have some sort of legacy or contribute to a legacy in whatever we're doing. So I'd like to see that happen as well in our district. And so far, our district is seen as taking on a huge challenge with the 4 nations and the 5 languages, and in terms of creating a legacy in this work, I kind of think we're already on that path. So I wanted to share with you the languages that we're talking about. We are focusing on Gitxsan, the languages of the Gitxsan, the Haisla, the Niska, the Tsimshian, and we're including the Wet'suwet'en. Although there are no schools specifically on Wet'suwet'en territory, we're hoping to be able to relate to the Wet'suwet'en students who are attending the schools as well. The province has 10 guiding principles of working with Indigenous people. And so I have just given you the principle number 10 on the screen, which is the province of BC recognizes that a distinctions-based approach is needed to ensure that the unique rights, interests, and circumstances of Indigenous peoples in BC are acknowledged, affirmed, and implemented. And this includes the First Nations, the Métis, and the Inuit as the Indigenous peoples of Canada. So part of my work is to honor all of the distinct dialects of these languages, to honor the relationships that the languages have to each other, and to sort of navigate through all of that in the work that we're doing, and help to learn more about that, and to also help to support you where needed in this work moving forward with these distinct languages and their dialects. I'm really excited, having had the orientation around the district with Agnes. I'm really grateful for the principals, the teachers, the First Nation support workers, and the students who welcomed me into their schools and shared the exciting work that they're doing already. As Agnes mentioned earlier, there is a tremendous amount of evidence of this work, not just the visible language, but it's also evident that there are protocols which are understood, there are stories that are shared, there are songs that are shared, and there's a real excitement and enthusiasm around this work, and that is super encouraging to be part of. One of the first things that I did last year was I developed a terms of reference for a network group of knowledge keepers who would help the district understand the traditional protocols around their distinct languages. So this is a photo of some of those knowledge keepers. There was representation from every one of the language groups that I spoke about earlier. And we unfortunately were only able to meet in person once in November, and then COVID hit. So I've been meeting with them through Facebook and texting and phone calls and couple of in-person meetings, but I'm really excited to continue this network group because they are really wonderful in terms of helping to guide us forward from, especially from a protocol perspective. So there's a lot of work to be done with the network. We could certainly expand the network. As some of you might be thinking already, oh, gee, you know, I know so-and-so and so-and-so, and they would be great to be part of that because they really understand the traditional protocols, and, you know, they need to be part of that. So I ask you to please share with me at some point that information that you might have and that recommendation. I also was really excited to start the Indigenous Language Revitalization Ambassadors Program, which at Cassie Hall looked like a language club at lunchtime. And at Parkside, it looked like a classroom sort of session of language learning in their beautiful cozy room there. And I was able to connect and engage with students at different levels, at the elementary and at the high school level, by sharing with them some songs and some total physical response, word lists and such, introductions. We played some games. I developed a bingo game and a weather game and a memory game and things like that. So we did all kinds of really fun things. And I was really excited when I was able to continue this work through the winter, which I typically live in Mexico, in Oaxaca, for the winter because of my arthritis. And I really was excited to be able to continue doing this using MS Teams. And what sort of came after that was the use of MS Teams and Zoom in the regular work that we're doing just because of COVID. So I was really happy to have that opportunity to do that prior to COVID and still stay connected with the schools. So that was really wonderful. So when we talk about Indigenous language culture in the classrooms, we're not just talking about resources. We're not just talking about games and such, although that's part of it. We want to talk about building an understanding of the laws and the stories and the protocols of the languages. That is it's a little bit more surface work, or sorry, it's a little deeper than surface work. And it requires a little bit more consideration to understand that and the intricacies around that. However, what's really important is, regardless of what we're doing, whether we're playing games or we're talking about some of the laws or the protocols, we need to always be building engagement and confidence in the language learning. That's the main point of getting this into the classrooms, just building that engagement and confidence. And that's not just with the students, that's also with us as educators as well. Building our knowledge and repertoire is as important. We always need to stay at least one step ahead of our students in this, and we can do that. So these are some of these images are some of the resources that I've built, only part of the resources, which I'll share more with you later after the break, which we will be taking in a few minutes. So I wanted to touch on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the booklet that you have there. So if you have the booklet, maybe you can pull it out now and actually handle it, maybe for the first time, maybe for the 10th time. It's, like I said to you earlier, it's something that I am looking at all the time. When I was going back and forth to negotiate the BCT agreement, I was on the plane a lot and I just read this book, you know, cover to cover. But every time I read it, I found that I got something new out of it, because my learning was being deepened by the messages that are in here. And I want to just give you, for those of you who are not familiar with this booklet, a little bit of background, and that is that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission took place between 2008 to 2015 under the capable guidance of Murray Sinclair, and who's highly respected, and did a tremendous amount of work along with others to make this possible. It was commissioned by the federal government, whose jurisdiction is, they have a fiduciary responsibility to Indigenous people and in this country. And so this little booklet basically summarizes the results of this commission. It has 10 principles in it. The book is actually split up into 2 parts. The first part is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 10 principles and 94 calls to action, which pertain mainly to the ongoing process of building trust, addressing healing, and creating a more equitable and inclusive society. Specifically, the calls of action that pertain to language and culture are in call to action 10, which if you go to your book, starts on page 24. And actually it starts on page 23. It's in the education section. And call number 10 is specifically detailed in 7 points. And so I've just put on the screen some of those 7 points that I think are really important. And that is to develop culturally appropriate curricula, to protect the rights to Aboriginal languages, including the teaching of Aboriginal languages as course credits or as credit courses, and enabling parent and community responsibility, control, and accountability, similar to what parents enjoy in public school systems. So this is in general, a statement, but it's interesting that that particular call to action refers to how well the public school systems have been doing with parents and community responsibility and control and accountability. I also wanted to state, also refer to the enabling of parents to fully participate in the education of their children. So language learning, we know, is best done in collaboration with many, many people, knowledge keepers, educators, and also families. We unfortunately don't have a lot of families who are first language speakers of our languages in our school district, but we do have some. We do have some that are absolutely willing to be part of this work. And so I'm just asking if we could maybe pay attention to who those people are and see if we might be able to include them in this work. The other call to action is 13, which is on page 26. So if you go to page 26, you'll see that there is a call to the federal government, a call upon the federal government to acknowledge that Aboriginal rights include Aboriginal language rights. So we hear a lot about rights and title, and this particular one is referring to Aboriginal language rights. And as Janet mentioned in her opening, she talked about some of the protocols around welcomes and some of the protocols around how we use our words to identify what we know about the rights of our people. And I think it's really important for us to always be mindful that in this work, we are not disrespecting the communities by learning the language. We are disrespecting the communities if we do not learn the language. It is extremely important to acknowledge that right of Aboriginal language and to support it as educators. Just as much as we support students to understand health matters, to understand well-being, it is really important for us to be prepared and to be building our practices around their rights to learn their languages. And it's, as Agnes mentioned too, it's just a good practice for everybody, for all of us in the community to be part of that. Call number 14 refers to the value of culture in our society, the value of Aboriginal languages in the culture of our society. And I'd like to just throw that out there, that we are all sort of trying to navigate what that means in terms of the work that we're doing and what it means to our families and our community. So if you're feeling like you don't fully understand that yourselves, don't worry, you're not alone. It is going to be a process, and we need to work together to understand what that means for us and find our comfort level. We are all, almost all, I think, raised, and I'm going to just sort of take a bit of a risk here. I'm going to assume that we were all raised in a primarily Western dominated or Eurocentric education system. Some of us were raised in homes where, even as Indigenous people, we were denied our opportunity to grow in our language and culture. We were part of a racist sort of attitude of family, and we, because we wanted to belong, so we would we would cause our own oppression. And we have a ways to go in terms of decolonizing ourselves and also understanding the value in really in what we know and what we can share. So we will very likely have to take a look at the indoctrination that we have experienced and understand a little bit more about the how Aboriginal languages can help to be valued in our culture as a whole. So there's also, and I won't go into any more specifics, but I'd like you just to understand that calls 22 and 23 pertain to us as, I believe, to us as educators who are working with students around health and wellness as the curriculum has indicated is important, and we know that anyway, but also to realize just how important it is to collaborate with Aboriginal healers and elders. We also need to realize that these careers in trades, in health, in education, in business, in law, etc., are all part of our responsibility as educators to support. We may find that we have non-First Nations students who could be wonderful advocates for this work moving forward, and it's really important to give them the tools that they need to support that moving forward. And if there are students who are Indigenous and we can identify who they are and support them and help their families to understand how skilled they are in terms of their knowledge and the types of careers that might be available to them which includes Indigenous language, then I appeal to you to do so. The back of the book the back half of the book is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It's commonly called UNDRIP. This section has 46 articles, and it is the #1 principle of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So the Truth and Reconciliation Commission identifies this document as the #1 principle. So the entire document, all 46 articles. I want to just have you take a look at Article 13, and it's on page 118. And it speaks to the Indigenous peoples have the right to revitalize, use, develop, and transmit to future generations their histories, languages, oral traditions, philosophies, writing systems, and literatures, and to designate and retain their own names for communities, places, and persons. And the reason why I bring this one to your attention is that some of our students have traditional names. I have a traditional name. Many of our support workers have traditional names. Some of our teachers have traditional names, and certainly our elders have traditional names in most cases. And I would like to have you consider, really strongly consider, the use of our traditional names to acknowledge our ancestors and to acknowledge those who gave us our names. Our names are extremely important. And if we can, although it might be difficult to pronounce the names, after you've used the names for a while, it actually becomes a lot easier. But just think about how important it is to do that. Our English names are given to us as a result, some of us as a result of religion and such, which is fine, but honoring our ancestors by having our traditional names is really important. So that is Article 13, or part of Article 13 I'd like you to think about. And Article 14 is the Indigenous peoples have the right to establish and control their educational systems and institutions, providing education in their own languages in a manner appropriate to their cultural methods of teaching and learning. Now, that was part of my work in Kitsim-Kalem by having a language and culture school and building that school with language and culture as the main focus, and also as an independent school, of course, following the Ministry of Education curriculum, etc. And I'd like to just say that this work that you're involved in now, and maybe have been for a while with Indigenous languages in your schools in this district, is part of this particular article. And I just want to applaud you for that and ask you to continue to do that in the good way that you have been doing that. So we're going to go to a break. And I'd like to just say that we'll break for 15 minutes, and we'll come back in 15 minutes, and I'll go over the Indigenous Language Revitalization SharePoint with you, and then we'll wrap up with that for the day. Okay. Oh, thank you, everyone.
Hello, it's Agnes again. Where's my face? There, you should be able to see my face. So we're going to come back in 15 minutes. So at 10:35, if everyone could come back, that would be good. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Amakantlak, Taknis Newsome. I hope everyone had a nice break, and we're going to have a little more fun than this session. So I'm going to engage in some language, some Tsimshian language with you. So I hope you will enjoy that. I'm going to share my screen and pop up a video for you to take a look at, which is it's a little lesson that my daughter Amber did a video of, and I'm hoping she'll do some more of these for me. But here is Amber with her teaching you about hands and fingers in Tsimshian.
Amasa, Mo'kim Gabao Dwayu, Amber Austin Dwayu, Anan, Gatsawel, Anan, Gatsawel, Moss, Hatzech, Sitnach, Hastels, Shkushkai, Gatsawel.
And Amber also prepared the some of you might know the Brown Bear book, and it is translated into Tsimshian Tsimalkiach, and we have just she just took pictures of the book and shared them with me, and she did a little video to go with it. So I'll just play that for you, and I will move the pages for you as well as she's speaking.
Muskum all, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Muskum Tuts, Nitska Dakoi. Muskum Tuts, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Stiana Gomosum Nat, Nitska Dakoi. Siana Gomosum Nat, Siana Gomosum Nat, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Quisquascum Gioden, Nitska Dakoi. Quisquascum Gioden, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Mashitkum Ganau, Nitska Dakoi. Mashitkum Ganau, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Siana Tutskum Dus, Nitska Dakoi. Siana Tutskum Dus, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Moxkum Has, Nitska Dakoi. Moxkum Has, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Tutskum Mati, Nitska Dakoi. Tutskum Mati, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Gulum Hon, Nitska Dakoi. Gulum Hon, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Sualaitmix, Nitska Dakoi. Sualaitmix, Goru Nitzen. Nidu, Gabuk Skulsk, Nitska Dakoi. Gabuk Skulsk, Goru Nitzen. Niitsum, Muskum all, Muskum Tuts. Siana Gomosum Nat, Quisquascum Gioden, Mashitkum Ganau, Siana Tutskum Dus, Moxcum Has, Tutskum Mati, Gulum Hon, Ada Sualaitmix, Nitska Dakam, Nidzum.
So those resources are an example of some of the pieces that I have gathered to put in the district SharePoint. And I wanted to have you just, if you've got access to your SharePoint, the district SharePoint, I'm sharing my screen with you, showing what to look for. And it is available to all staff. And you'll see that I have got the Indigenous Language Revitalization button which you can go to. I'm hoping that some of you will access this as we go along, but if not, I would really like you to consider going into it when we're finished our session today. So the language revitalization section here is set up as a series of files. And I want to thank Carol Gagnon for helping me with this. This was all new technology to me. And I was really grateful to have this opportunity, because in language revitalization, one of the most important pieces is the sharing of resources. And so the purpose of this SharePoint is to today to give you a sampling of what I've already started on this SharePoint, but then to also have you think about things that you as educators might need further in terms of easy access to these resources. I'd like you to please consider sharing with me, giving me feedback on what you might have found useful or what you might need. As Agnes mentioned, the resource centers in each of our areas, territories, is chock full of resources that you can borrow. Now, some of those things, those items, you can just take out to have in your classroom. But sometimes when you're planning your lessons or you're looking for some information about something, it's nice to have it at your fingertips, I think. And so the purpose of this SharePoint was to give you that opportunity. Obviously, as educators, we don't always work, when the resource centers are open. We often will do things at other times. So hopefully this will give you an opportunity to access these things. So the first, sorry, I'll just go back. This is set up, these files are set up so that the first file is about the Indigenous Language Revitalization Coordinator information and resources. So this is going to be mainly sort of basic information about investments that have been made and things like that. And I'll show that to you in a moment. The next one is the Tsimshian language resources. And that one I've populated a bit for you because I know Tsimshian. And the others, Gitsan, Haisla, Niska, and Wet'suwet'en, I'm hoping that that you and people you know will help to share resources that we can use to populate those sections. So let me show you first of all the ILR coordinator info and resources. So there are what I call very important protocols, or VIP section, and newsletters, presentations, books, videos, research, Indigenous Language Revitalization Network, and the Indigenous Language Revitalization Ambassadors. And so in here, this is sort of the foundation on which we're operating our language revitalization efforts. So the very important protocols, or the VIP section, includes the 10 principles of BC working with First Nations, the letter from the Premier to the Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and, Minister of Indigenous Reconciliation and Relations. And then the BCT agreement itself, the First Peoples Cultural Council policy paper, the Indigenous Languages Act that received royal assent on June 21st, 2019, in Ottawa, and then the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action, and the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, and also a document that Agnes shared with me, which is a cultural competency scale, which was developed by Gail Bedard, and it's really very interesting. and it's interesting to look at that, having been on this journey of cultural awareness and decolonization and Indigenous language revitalization for a number of years, and to see where I fit in to this. And I also think about people I know and where they fit in and how far they've come on that scale. So let's just take a look. First of all, if we click on the 10 principles, we can see that that document is in its entirety. So it has the sort of the preamble and then each of the 10 principles. So the one that I presented to you earlier was number 10, which is the distinctions-based approach to the unique rights, interests, and circumstances of Indigenous peoples. And so that is where that information came from. Oops, let me get back to that. Where did it go? Sorry about that. I just closed the screen. All right. So the each of these documents is important, and I hope that you will take a look at them, even just to become familiar with where they are in case you need them. Some of you might be doing further degrees, master's degrees or PhDs and such, or you might be taking courses in Indigenous relations and such. And this is just a really quick access to those important documents. So the other section is the newsletters. So I have in there a little snapshot bio of who I am, in case you're wondering, if you didn't catch my introduction. This is just a one pager of who I am. And then there's the announcement that was made for my position as a contractor. And then a newsletter that I created for the community coordinators around what I'm doing. So there's a little newsletter in case you're wondering what's up. And then not all presentations, but some of the presentations that I've made are in this section. So I will be putting my PowerPoint from today on that in this site in case you'd like to have a copy of it, or you can print it, or if you just want to refer back to something that I spoke to, you're more than welcome to pull that up. This one here is the presentation to the principals and vice principals, the administrators, the school leadership. Actually, I won't, it's going to take a moment to bring that up, so I'm not going to go into that. I want to get you to your lunch on time, or maybe even a few minutes early, so I won't be going through everything. So those are the presentations. When it comes to books, I seriously could, this could be my biggest section. I have probably thousands of books, certainly at least 1,000 books on Indigenous information and language and things like that. But what I've put in here is a little spreadsheet with some of my favorite children's books. And I've set that up so that it is editable. So if you wanted to download it, you could actually add your own in, but these are just sort of my favorites. And I've put the ages that they're most appropriate for. But when we talk about Indigenous language revitalization, we also need to realize that that we have to start somewhere. And some of us, you know, are at the very, very beginning, early stages of understanding that there is a language on our territories. Maybe some of you are new to the territory and haven't heard the language yet. And so some of these books might be super useful to you in terms of your early learning of the language. And some of the books are actually in English. But they pertain to some of the protocols or the important stories that are told about our communities. So this is just a little snippet of some of the books and a little bit of an abstract, as well as where you can find them, and in some cases how much they cost. So I hope that's somewhat useful. If you would like me to expand that further for you, if there's anything in particular you're looking for, I'm sure that I can work with the resource centers to add some of those books, the books they have in the centers, to this list, if that's useful at all. I want to just open up the Knowing Home research. This is actually developed by a PhD student who was supervised by Dr. Lorna Williams as well. And it's I think, a really important piece. Gloria Snively is the PhD student who is Dr. Gloria Snively now, but she wrote this book on braiding Indigenous science with Western science. This is book number 1, so we can look forward to more. This is through the University of Victoria. But in here, I've added, I've kept the links intact so that you can actually go in and click on pieces that might be of most interest to you in terms of what you're requiring the information for. So even though our language learning might be at a surface level for most of us, our knowledge of how to connect it and the stories to what we're doing as part within the curriculum can actually be deepened by links such as this. So I just wanted to give that to you, especially for those of you who are seeking more information and connections for the middle school to high school level, or even your DL program. You might find that useful. And then, as I spoke to you before, I created a small book on my journey, and that's my MILR, which is Masters of Indigenous Language Revitalization. Adao in Tsimshian means story or true telling, and this is the little book, so you can actually go into that and take a look at it. So the Tsimshian language resources files are set up A to J, and as I was sort of putting this together, I realized, oh my goodness, we could actually add more and define these files further. So for example, songs are in the stories and history section, but maybe as we learn more about the stories, because of course the songs are the stories, just as I mentioned with the Hawaiian language revitalization, their songs or hulas are their stories that told their history and became an important part of their language revitalization efforts. And so these stories and history might end up being separated so that the songs are separate as well. And then I want to also take a look at the word list section and incorporate the videos in there more so that they're together. So over the next little while, you'll see me moving some things around. If you have any questions, maybe you found something useful and then I've moved it, I'll try to keep it in that same folder for a while. And then I'll break it out into this other one. But if you're confused and looking for something, you can't find it, just shoot me an email at my colleen.austin@cmsd.bc.ca. And anyway, I wanted to just let you know that my hope is that we will be able to populate all of these files so that this repository includes resources from the other languages as well. But let me show you the Tsimshian ones to start. So the VIP in my experience is the protocols regarding introductions, introducing yourself or doing formal greetings, acknowledging the territory, understanding the #1 law of the Tsimshian nation, which is Hlomsk, or respect, taking a look at acknowledging the times of the day and the days of the week. These are important. As you learn Tsimshian, and it might be true with the other languages as well, one of the things that's most important is we start most of our sentences off with when something happened. Whether it's happening now or it happened before or it's going to happen. We always talk about time. We make that reference of when things have happened. So the times of the day and the days of the week are really important. So I'm going to just open that file for you. So what I've done is I've created these little templates. And certainly if you want me to, like if you want this in your language, just send me a message with what it is in your language, and I'll be happy to populate the template for you and then put it into the repository under your language section. And so basically what we've got here are the times of the day. So amagantlak, amasa, amagaurisugyaks, amaatk, Platam Sidatmum. And so we've got, I've got that in that template. The other thing that I've done, and this is not to be disrespectful for those who have developed the standard orthography for Tsimshian Samalgya, but I wanted to be able to create some sort of a pronunciation or a phonetic or a phoneme or something so that it would help with engagement of those who don't know the language and don't know the sounds yet. So if you will take a look at the first one, I've got am, ah, so that's the first word, am, ah. So I've got a hyphen in between, so that shows that it's one word. And then I've got gun, flak, gun, flak. And the reason why I've got the THL is, and I really like this, the Niskas use this for their syllable sound. And I really like that because I think that it helps us to start to pronounce our barred L in a way that can be understood. The elders would, or the fluent speakers would obviously know that we're not fluent first language speakers because we're saying full, but they will appreciate our attempt. So ama gun flak. So ama gun flak. And the days of the week, if we take a look at those, we've got hat li gul sa, hat li gul sa. And although it's not exactly the perfect pronunciation, it's very close. So hatlikulsa would be the actual proper way or the appropriate way to say that. So I want you to just know that this repository includes these types of resources that will give you an opportunity to get started on your learning and speaking Tsimshian journey. And hopefully we can get these set up for the other languages as well. I would love that. The other thing I've done is I've created, for example, a poster. It's a yao in Tsimshian means law. And so it's pronounced ayao. And the hlomsk is about respect, but it's, that would sort of be the basic way of saying it, but truly this law includes way more than just one word of respect. It actually includes what the expectation is around the law. The language, and some people have said, well, why can't we translate "O Canada," for example, into the language? And although I think some people have attempted to do that in their languages, it's sometimes difficult to do translations verbatim because the words, the sort of the richness of each word and each law is so great that it's really hard to encapsulate that understanding or that knowledge in the language with just one word. And so, as Janet mentioned, sometimes our knowledge keepers will speak if they feel comfortable sharing their stories with you, they will speak, sort of in length about what they want to share with you. And I think it's really important to realize that, if they're first language speakers, they're going to maybe be challenged by finding the one word in English that's going to be able to say what they know to be a vast array of knowledge. So just be patient with them as they navigate through that, their challenge perhaps of sharing all the vastness and the richness of their knowledge with you. And I hope that you will continue to make them feel really comfortable in sharing their stories. They're just so amazing. So this is the Tla'amin'sk law. This was part of my master's. I think it's really important to for us to follow this #1 law of the Tsimshian territory when we're on it. And that is to honor or respect, to respect ourselves, to respect others, to respect all things, to take care of ourselves and be happy. And I actually, when I was doing my master's, a song came to me in a dream that went with this. And so I will record it and I will put it in this section for you so that you can hear the song. It's really quite beautiful. I'm not a great singer, but just ignore my singing and just pay attention to the actual song itself. So anyway, there's the protocols. So now I'm going to go into the next section, which is the pronunciation guides. Some of you might be wondering, okay, well, where do I get access to how to pronounce something, or how do I understand the pronunciation guide? And so in this section I'll continue to put in some of these pronunciation guides. But what I do is I wanted to give you an example of the book Wait for Me. Some of you might be familiar with this Wait for Me book. And if you have books that you're using on a regular basis that you want to do this type of a word list with, it would be great to continue to do something like this. So this particular book has a number of objects that are important in the book. So what I did was I put the Tsimshian word. We don't have a word for kite, but we do have the word for fly, which is gipaik. Gipaik. If you said gipaik, you'd be really close. So I just put the sounds like on there as well. So rock, for example, is lop. So lop, lop. And then knife, I love this one, hakbak, hakbak. So that's for knife. So this is an example of a little pronunciation guide that I've developed for that particular book, but there's lots of other things in there too. So I'm just looking at the time and I want to make sure that I get through all of this. The dictionaries are in here. So the link to the John Donne dictionary, the old dictionary that he started, that he developed many years ago and was published in 1995. The School District 52 link to the dictionary that they have, and then the online dictionary from UNBC. So those are all on there and you can play around with them. They're lots of fun. I also wanted to include some maps. So in the Sprinkle and Time book, there's this little map here showing from to Kitwanga and Giddos and Kitsalas, Terrace, Kitsimkalem, and then to the ocean. And I just love this. This is a beautiful book if you haven't got the Sprinkle in Time, I recommend that you get it. It's fabulous. So that's one of the maps. The other one is a more academic piece, which is by Dr. James MacDonald in the People of the Robin book. And this shows the territories, the clan territories in and around Kitsim-Kalem, which is Gisbetwada, and Terrace, which is Lakibu. The college is actually sort of the central point, is kind of the pole up there is sort of one side is Gisbetwada and one side is Lakibu. If you're wondering, you know, which territory, whose territory am I on? And if I'm going to get someone to welcome, do a welcome here in the school district, who should it be? Well, technically it should be Lakibu, but it's a Tsimshian nation. So anybody from any of these houses in the Tsimshian nation can do the acknowledgement of the territory and the welcome to the territory. And if they are Lakibu, they'll probably welcome you as a member of the Lakibu to Lakibu land. So there's the little map of there. And I'm hoping to, let's see if I can just, okay, 1 second, there we go. Okay, so there's a start of the filing on the maps. Let me know if you need others. So I wanted to go to the stories and history. I spoke to you about the Sprinkle in Time book, and Vanessa Sheary from the Resource Center here was kind enough to scan the pages from this book. It's a school district resource, and I just put it into a little booklet format. So right now it's the month for berry picking. So Hatli Laksimai. And so Isabel's story, she's from Kitsil, she's just written a beautiful story here. Sometimes it's nice to sort of color these in and read the story and talk about it, preserve a few things and such. So I put that in there for you. And I've also put in here some songs as well. As I mentioned to you, there would be some songs. So the Thumbkin song, for example, is in here. And my daughter's just in the process of making a little video of that for you with her girls. So that will be forthcoming. And anyway, so there's just a variety of different things. The highway music video is in here. This is for the missing and murdered, honoring the missing and murdered in the Highway 16. This was a video that was done by my students in Kitsim-Kalem, and it's just beautiful. It went viral, so that was really fabulous. And I've got lyrics to this as well. Okay, some of the students in that video are actually now in the schools in the district, which is really exciting. So they will look somewhat familiar to you. There's also an order form here from Kitsim-Kalem to buy the Sleeping Beauty mountain book and such. So those are in there. All right, so then we've got art and design. And I really want to find a way of populating this more. But right now I've started a calendar section. So I've got September in here. So if you're wanting to put an image for September in Tsimshian up, Roy Henry Vickers has been kind enough to give us the use of his beautiful berry picking image. He put it on Facebook as well. It's just gorgeous. And so Hatli Laksimai is how we say the time for picking berries. And I just acknowledge Roy Henry Vickers and his contribution to this. And so you can print that off and put it up or use it for whatever purpose you might need it. Okay, so we've also got, which might be sort of the more, maybe some of the more useful sections, and that is, has to do with word lists. So some of you, as you're planning your year, might be thinking about Pink Shirt Day, or how do I say Merry Christmas in Tsimshian? How do I honor the Ulukans and such for the seasonal rounds? And I'm going to do more work on seasonal rounds. I'm going to work with the resource people and the or resource centers and some of the First Nation support workers and language teachers to see what we can do to develop this further. But as a teacher, of course, we're thinking about how we can honor or align the language and of the territory with some of these important dates. And so I've just put those in there. I'm actually going to also include the pronunciation, how to say them in there as well. I just didn't have time when I was doing this initially, but anyway, they're there. So at least you know there is a word for Pink Shirt Day. Where is it? Somewhere in September here. Where's September? Here we go. So, or sorry, Orange Shirt Day, which is coming up. So, ama hatli sitatoch, hatli sitatoch. So sitatoch means orange. And so hatli means the time of orange. Ama means good. So it's a good time of orange shirts. So there's that. Anyway, so there's the, some of the resources and the word lists. And some of you have asked me to make labels that you can put up around your classrooms and on your desks and your chairs. And how do I have a drawer with scissors in them. So how do I say scissors? And so what I did is I created this little label. You can just cut them out, or you can screenshot them and make them bigger. And so you can start labeling a few things. So I would really love to hear more about the types of labels that you want to make, because I think this is so much fun. This is actually the most fun of all, because I'd never, as a principal, had time to do this sort of thing, and I just love it. So I've also included the phonetic in here as well. I've also included a few basic sentences too. So, what do you want? Goyo hasagan, and I want, pass me. So and so there's two different ways of saying that. This is whatever. So you can just pick up an item and you can say slam for crayon or marker, slam gua. This is a marker, slam gua. Okay, so that's the labels, objects 1, and I'm hoping to make more of those. So let's continue on to games, because I think that this is really the most fun of all. Now you might have to turn up your volume to listen to the video on some of these, because it's actually my granddaughter who's at Skeena School now. She was in Kitwanga last year. She's was raised by her fluent speaking first language Tsimshian grandmother, and she's now here at Skeena. And so she helped me to develop an origami finger game. And so I shared this with the administrators, and we had I thought had a lot of fun with this. It was really neat to see them all engage in the language through these games. And so I made up some kits, and they had an opportunity to play the game. So what I didn't have a chance to show them at the time was the videos that went with the word list. So basically in here is the finger game instructions. So this is what it looks like. So you've got the game itself. You've got some little paper pieces that you can cut out and glue onto the finger game. And inside where you get your fortune, there's a page with fortunes. So there's 3 games. They're color coded, and I'll show you more of that in a moment. So here's how it looks. There's the little fortunes right there. And in the on the stickers 1 to 3, obviously these aren't stickers until you glue them on, or unless you print them onto sticky paper. What I've put on here is finger game number 1 is yellow, number 2 is pink, and number 3 is green. So we try to sort of stick to that color cardstock to go with the game. And there are different combinations of words. So I've included some animals, some objects, some food, things like that, some numbers, colors. And I've also put again, the phonetics. So obviously this is a borrowed word, soup. And then M-O-O-N in English says moon, but in Simshan it says mon, mon. And when we have a dot, or I'm sorry, a apostrophe, we say na. So it's a stop, na, na, na. So these are the 3 finger games. You can print those off, put them on the games, and then go from there. So I wanted to show you the video of my
Origami
granddaughter.
finger game 1 in Simshan. Soup. Mon. Mai. Semi. Horn. Meti. Ksa. Outa.
Oh, it stopped, but that's okay. So so the 3 videos are in there. So you can take a look at the word list and you can watch the video and just, you can test your own pronunciation according to the phonetic as well. So I just want to thank Safira for helping me with that and to initiate that. So there's all different kinds of games. I'll just show you one more, and that is the matching game. There's word searches with answer keys. The matching game, I've set up 3 different matching games. So this is the first one. So as you learn those words from the other word list, you can start to mix and match. So this image matches, and this is berries. My, so number 3 would go in there, and so on. So you can print those off, you can have some fun with that. Also, I've got the answer keys. So for anyone who's wanting to check to make sure they got the right answers, there's the answer keys for all 3 at once. Okay. All right. So I'm trying to give you an opportunity to think about aligning your regular types of lessons with the language and have some fun with it. The main thing about engagement is it needs to be fun. Otherwise, we will stop. I don't know how many of you have studied new languages and found it very tedious and difficult, and you didn't feel engaged, and we don't want that. We definitely don't want that. So I've also got in here lessons and rubrics, and I think that this is going to be an important, I've got many of these, but I just put in a First Nations art rubric that I did for the high school. And in here is, it's a leather apron that they were doing. So just, they learned how to draw an ovoid, do some daily exercise, practice painting, cutting out the apron, tracing the template, painting on the apron. And then I just wanted them to think about how their effort might look. So they did a self-assessment with this, and then I did set up marks. It was very basic, but it was pretty useful. So I've got tons and tons of resources that I can populate all of this with, and I'd love to hear from you in terms of what more you would like to see. I want to now just go back to something that I think is very important. We're getting very close to taking a break for lunch now, but I wanted to show you in the first folder under ILR coordinator, you'll see research. This research is really important. Some of this research is done by local scholars, such as Patricia Vickers, myself, where am I here? There's Anne Hill. Some of you remember working with Anne Hill, Margaret Anderson, and then there's other people who have been instrumental in my journey, such as Onawa MacGyver and her research on early learning and language, how important it is in terms of language revitalization. And I wanted to have also included Kai Krikorian's thesis here on creating important connections to be mindful of gender equity. And as we go through the process of Indigenous language revitalization and culture and protocols and such, this is a really important piece. Kai is not Indigenous, but this is just a really important piece. I want to pull up Anne Hill's research, because some of you have probably worked with Anne as a music teacher
1121.
in the district. And I wanted to just make sure that you are aware of this. We talk about the sharing of songs and stories and such. Anne did this research with Mildred Roberts. And it's a really important piece in terms of understanding the protocols around songs, and they can pertain to stories too. So the most important part of this research is to understand that there are common songs, permitted songs, and house songs. So it's really important to know that when you're sharing songs, to acknowledge them properly. If you are going to be using a song that belongs to, that someone has written, like my Hlomsk song, for example, I would just like you to please, it's not a common song, but if you could just acknowledge where you got it from, that, you know, this is a song that Colleen did in her master's or whatever, that would be fine. If you want to send me an email and say, can I use this song? I'd like to get it in writing that you're giving me permission, that's fine. And house songs require the chiefs to give you permission. So those are typically not shared widely. And when they're being performed in public and you record them and you want to use them for educational purposes, just contact the chief or matriarch in most cases to see whether or not you can do that. So I wanted to bring to your attention Anne's research and that protocol. Okay, so I am going to just go back to my last slide here. And in that slide, I've got the, I would just like to say, Toyaksik Newsome, thank you so much, everyone, for having me here today. And I hope that this was useful in some way, and that you are looking forward to this journey, your journey in this work. And oops, that's not going to work. Okay, oh, here we go. Make it bigger. All right. So I'm going to call our lunch break, turn this back over to Agnes, and just wish all of you a wonderful lunch break. And I certainly look forward to joining you this afternoon with Monique as well. So thank you, everybody.
Hello, welcome. I can't open my video, but that's okay. You have my voice. I'd like to first of all thank Colleen for the work that you're doing and for sharing with us. You know that Colleen's work is extensive and there's lots of material there in Tsimshian. We're working on all the other languages to have the same materials available in all of the languages, from the Indigenous languages in our district. So just to reassure you that, and if you can help out in any way, we're open for any help you can give. So thank you, Colleen, for sharing with us the work that you're
Agnes,
doing.
if I could jump in for a second.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to share a picture, but apparently I can't. I just wanted a little housekeeping item for this afternoon. It appeared, well, we know that when we are on a Zoom call and we stream live to Zoom or to YouTube, which is what we're doing, there's a lag. Sometimes the lag is 2 minutes, sometimes it's 5 minutes. So we will be starting at precisely 12:30, and I use the term our time because our time probably will turn into 12:33 or 12:34 for you because of the lag. So Carol's designing a graphic that is similar to Dr. Bonnie Henry's that says we will be starting shortly. And when the lag appears to you, the lag will appear to you. And I would like to echo Agnes's thoughts as well on Colleen's work and her contribution to our district. I'm extremely grateful for Colleen and her presence in our district, and I hope that you can take some of this valuable information that you learned this morning and use it in your classrooms moving forward. Thank you. See everybody at 12:33, I suspect.
Okay, see you then. Have a good lunch.